All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik wa an'am ala Sayyidina wa Habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. Amma ba'd. All right. It's been a few weeks since we had our last dars. As a quick recap, I'm not sure if you guys caught the recording or not for those who weren't here, but basically we were talking about the quote-unquote disagreement between Sayyidina Fatimah alayhi salam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And we went over, I'll recap last dars and last subject a little bit more in detail, just so we can catch up a little bit and we can continue from there. We went over the ahadith which we have in our Sahih books, in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Okay? And we looked at them and we discussed how Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh had added things to the hadith. And the things he added to the hadith were extremely dangerous and created a lot of fitna. So a lot of our Shia brothers and sisters, and obviously the ulama of the Shias, they took this hadith. Now I'm referring to those, again, I don't want to generalize all the Shias. Now I'm referring to those who went a little bit further and started making claims that there were issues, number one, between Sayyidina Fatima and Sayyidina Ali alayhim as-salam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Umar radiallahu anhu, etc., which then, instigated and started, lighting a fire under the idea that, they should be hated, that the Sahaba should be hated because Ali radiallahu anhu alayhi salam and Fatima alayhi salam hated them, etc. But where did they get these ideas from? Some of these ahadith which we have in Bukhari and Muslim. But when we look at them, okay, even though they are in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, with all due respect to Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh and Imam Muslim rahmatullah alayh, there was parts of the ahadith, again, we're not going to go into detail, that's in the last recording. If you guys want to go, you can see it. But Imam Zuhri rahmatullah alayh is a great faqih. Okay? He's not a muhaddith per se. He is more a faqih. So we accept fiqh from Imam Zuhri rahmatullah alayh. Hadith, we question it. Hadith, we don't accept it blindly. From Imam Zuhri. Imam Zuhri rahmatullah alayh is the same one who also narrated very strange hadith. So in Bukhari, where he claims that the Prophet ﷺ was so overwhelmed that he tried to, wal-'iyadhu billah, commit suicide. Okay? Again, from Imam al-Zuhri, rahmatullah alayh, in our quote-unquote sahih books. They are sahih books, however, that does not mean everything in them is technically sahih. By what I mean by that is by definition or by meaning. And there's a lot of science behind that, which we're not going to get into right now. Sorry, just letting some more guys in. So again, just recapping what we were discussing in the last dars. But then we went and we looked at some other sources that we have in our books that don't mention those extra spices or all the drama that Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh had mentioned, which hinted at hatred and issues between the Khulafa radiallahu anhum ajma'in, and so on. And then we looked at other ahadith from our books as well, which paint a completely different picture. A picture which had nothing to do with any sort of hatred whatsoever, or any sort of animosity whatsoever. And that it was quite respectful, and that at the end of the day, there was just a difference of opinion, but with respect. And then we looked at the books of the Shia. And we looked at the books of the Shia and their sources and some of their major sahih sources, which also proved that those ziyadat or those additions from Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh concerning this topic were also false, even from the books of the Shia. Okay, so we had covered that in the last dars. Now we're going to continue on the subject, and now, because if for those who were here, if you remember, one of the things that Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh mentioned in that hadith, again, which was a major issue, in any case, one of the things he mentioned is that he says that Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam stayed upset and angry with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu until she passed away and never spoke to him. Okay, those were the words used in the last hadith, which we covered, which was very long. If you guys remember, I showed you they were like underlined, and all the underlined parts were the additions of Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh, which should not be accepted, as we proved from our other ahadith and from the ahadith even of the Shia, which also deny that. Now, all this to say, again, just as a quick recap, this is all about the disagreement about the ard, or the piece of land called Fadak. Mainly that, with a couple other things on the side, after the passing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam came to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and essentially was asking for her inheritance, and then Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet alayhi salam said that we don't inherit, that the Prophet alayhi salam doesn't inherit anything to anyone, except that everything of his was given in sadaqah. And that which was his, that al-bayt, so the family of the Prophet ﷺ will still benefit from it, will still eat from its fruits from that land, and as well as the fuqara of the Muslimin, the needy of the Muslims. But nobody will inherit that land or anything else per se, except that it would be given continuously in sadaqah to the family of the Prophet ﷺ and to those in need. Again, that's just a quick summary of what we had covered last time. Now we continue, and we're going to see, did she in fact, alayhi salam, Sayyidina Fatima, stay upset as Imam al-Zuhri said in that hadith in Bukhari and in Muslim? And we're going to look at it. Now, Sheikh Khaled, Allah yahfadhu, he says, again, I'm just going to quickly look at the Arabic so I can translate it quickly. He says, as we hinted in the other hadith in Tirmidhi, which did not mention all that, drama, and also in Nahj al-Balagha. Nahj al-Balagha is one of the major sources of the Shia. That Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam accepted the fact that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that I heard the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying that we do not inherit any inheritance, and in fact it's sadaqah, etc., etc. And that she accepted it, and she says, "Anta wama sami'tahu min Rasoul Allah alayhi salatu wasalam." She says, you do that which you heard from the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa wasallam. Okay, and she let it go. Now, another proof that it wasn't a major issue like Imam Zuhri rahmatullah alayhi made it seem is the fact that after the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and even after the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu, during the Khilafah, let's jump to the Khilafah of Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam, and then even Sayyidina Al-Hasan alayhi salam, they continued managing that land, if you would, and that inheritance, quote unquote, from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the same way that Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu did, and the same way Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu did. Okay, so this whole idea that Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu were, just out of spite of Ahl al-Bayt, wal-'iyadhu billah, that they did this because they didn't want to give her rights, etc., is just mind-boggling. Because Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam and Sayyidina Al-Hasan, when they were in charge, and they were Amir al-Mu'mineen at the time, and they had the Khilafah, they didn't change anything. They continued the same process that Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu were upon. Now, we're going to look at another hadith. Compare this to the one of Imam al-Zuhri. If, for those who remember all the, the spices that were added to that hadith and, the drama in that hadith. Now let's look at this hadith from Imam al-Sha'bi. Imam al-Sha'bi rahmatullah alayh is his status and his, what would you call it? I guess his status, let's say, is much higher of that of Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh. Okay, and his knowledge, etc. So now this hadith is from Imam al-Sha'bi rahmatullah alayhi. He says, لما مضت فاطمة عليها السلام أتاها أبو بكر الصديق. Now listen to the completely different narrative from somebody who is a lot more reliable, okay, especially in hadith. Now, guys, it's extremely important to not allow our minds to derail off of what we're speaking about. Now we're talking about hadith. We're not talking about fiqh. Like we said, Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh, when he speaks about fiqh, ala rasi wal ayn, no problem, we accept it. When he speaks about fiqh, no problem. But hadith, not the same. And vice versa for some others as well. Somebody could be a muhaddith, but when he talks about fiqh, we're like, listen, Imam, we respect you, but please stay away from fiqh, stay away from tafsir, etc., etc. Because we've noticed when you talk about fiqh, you make a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of a'imma like this. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody is perfect in every single subject. Okay? Now, keeping that in mind, this narration from Imam al-Sha'bi rahmatullah alayhi, he says, in this case, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu came to see Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam. Because look, there was a disagreement. She thought that she had the right to inherit from her father, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And then she heard from Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said that he does not inherit anything to anyone. So imagine, okay, put yourself in her shoes alayhi salam. She's the daughter of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. She was never informed of this, but because she knows Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, she accepted what he said, and she knows that he's not going to lie, because that's Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So she accepted it. She says, okay, you do that which you're told from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? Now, keeping that in mind, that doesn't mean that because she accepted it and she let it go, that it didn't leave, let's say, a bad taste in her mouth. Okay? It did. However, it was not that of hatred, and we're going to see that here. So after time was passing, Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, just like when you have some sort of disagreement with a friend or even a family member, you don't necessarily right away become enemies. You don't become enemies. You have some sort of disagreement. You kind of distance yourself a little bit, right? And you don't always cut them off. You don't always stop talking to them, right? You kind of distance yourself a little bit because it's a sensitive topic. And if it's something that's not so sensitive, you couldn't care less, life goes on. But when it's a sensitive topic, you kind of take a stance a little bit and you back off. But when you see them, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? How's everything? Everything is okay, right? Life goes on. So similar situation. These are human beings. Radiallahu anhum wa alayhim salam. So now Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, after some time, that tension, if you would, I wouldn't even call it tension, but let's say the lack of closeness like it used to be was bothering him so much. And he came to see Fatima alayhi salam. And Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu alayhi salam, he says, Ya Fatima, he says, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is here. He says, may I give him permission to come in? And she said yes. So, two things here. Number one, it's not like Ali radiallahu anhu, who's the man of the house, he just decides who comes in and who goes. Okay? He took her permission. He took the permission of his wife, Sayyidina Fatima, alayha salam. She said it was cool. She's like, Na'am, sure, ahla wa sahla. So then he gave permission to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Imagine. You're talking about Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Ali radiallahu anhu. And he could have, said like, this is my friend, this is a man, he's coming in, and just let him in. But no, he asked permission from Fatima, alayhi salam. Can he come in? She said yes, and he came in. And the reason for him coming, again, for those who remember the hadith from Zuhri, keep that in the back of your mind. And listen to this one. فَدَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا يَتَرَضَّاهَا. He came to make sure that she was pleased with him, to make sure that there was no more of that sour taste in her mouth, that bitter taste in her mouth from that awkward moment when she came to ask for her inheritance. And he said, but I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying this. So he didn't want that barrier, if you would, to remain. So he came to her and he says, Wallahi, he says, I swear by Allah, I will never leave this house, or it is also understood as Mecca in any case, and the wealth of the needy, except that I spend it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to please Rasoul Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to please you, O Ahl al-Bayt. So he says, I'll read a part of the Arabic. إلا ابتغاء مرضات الله ومرضات رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم ومرضاتكم أهل البيت. He says that I will not stop, essentially applying the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doing that which pleases Allah and pleases His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and al-Bayt, the family of the Prophet. And he says, Mardatikum, I need your approval, if you would. And I need your acceptance, because I only do this for the approval and acceptance of Allah, His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, and your, O family of Ahl al-Bayt, I need your approval as well and your blessings. ثُمَّ تَرَضَّاهَا حَتَّى رَضِيَتْ. And he kept pleading with her. He kept pleading with Sayyidina Fatima. Let's, please, I'm just telling you what the Prophet ﷺ told me. I'm just applying what the Prophet ﷺ told me. And he's essentially, almost begging her, please, this tension, let's put it aside. I'm just telling you what the Prophet ﷺ told me. Until she was pleased. This is the hadith. This is the hadith from who? Imam al-s.a.w, who has a much higher level than Imam al-Zuhri, rahmatullah alayh. Now, another one from al-Imam al-Awza'i. And when we say Imam al-Awza'i, rahmatullah alayh, we're talking about an Imam like Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullah alayh, an Imam like Imam Malik, rahmatullah alayh. These Imams are all on the same level, okay? He says, Balaghani, he says, I heard that Sayyidina Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wa alayhi salam, was upset with Abu Bakr. But then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he went out until he stood at her door. And he specifies on an extremely hot day. And he says that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says, I will not leave my spot until you, O daughter of Rasoul Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, are pleased with me. Look at this picture, or these pictures from these two ahadith, from Imam al-Sha'bi and Imam al-Awza'i rahimahumullah, versus that of the narration of Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah alayh. This shows the attachment of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam, and his dedication to Ahl al-Bayt and Ahl al-Bayt, and that he's completely uncomfortable with the idea that the daughter of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam could be, could have a sour taste in her mouth because of what he informed her with regards to that hadith. And then you have another hadith, which is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, which shows the complete opposite. That they had no concern for each other, no regard for each other whatsoever, and that there was hatred, and that there was issues between Ali radiallahu anhu and Umar, and Fatima and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhum ajma'een. It's mind-boggling. And even the term that was used in the hadith, that she did not speak to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu until she passed, the twist on it from the other hadith is clarified from the following hadith. This is from who? From Sitna Aisha radiallahu anha. She says that Fatima radiallahu alayha salam and Al-Abbas alayhi salam came to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu asking about the inheritance. Okay? Again, I'm going to try to, man, time is really flying. I'm going to try to keep this as quick as possible. So essentially came asking for it. He mentioned the same hadith that was mentioned in the other hadith. And then at the end of this hadith, it mentions that فَلَمْ تُكَلِّمْهُ فِي ذَلِكَ الْمَالِ حَتَّى مَاتَتْ. This one explains that she did not speak to him with regards to the inheritance until she passed. In the other hadith, it's like she did not speak to him until she passed away. Done. About what was not mentioned. It was just made to seem as just she did not speak to him until she passed away, just to show that she was completely upset with him and angry with him, etc. But in this hadith, it clarifies and specifies that she did not speak to him about that inheritance until, again, another time, until she passed away, alayha salam. Now, again, I'm just going to try to pick and choose what I want to mention here because we're really running out of time fast. All right. Now, another thing to keep in mind as well. So, in this hadith, it mentions Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam and Sayyidina Al-Abbas alayhi salam. Keep in mind, so if the Prophet alayhi salatu salam was to inherit, to have any inheritance left for anybody to inherit, there wasn't just Fatima alayhi salam. There was the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, and there was the uncle of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, being Al-Abbas, and none of them received any inheritance. And this is something very well known. So remember, some of these wives are also the daughters of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, Sitna Aisha, and the daughter of Sidna Umar, Hafsa alayha salam. So you have two daughters of the two who are being accused of withholding inheritance from Fatima alayha salam, but then they also didn't give any of the inheritance supposedly to their own daughters, nor take any for themselves, obviously. So nobody inherited anything. So it was never an issue. Because like we said, when Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam and Sayyidina Al-Hasan alayhi salam, when they were in charge, they also didn't be like, all right, guys, you know what? This was our land. This was, because some of the Rawafid, if you would, because like we said, there are different sects of Shi'as, just like there are different sects of Sunnis. Some of them went as far to say as that land was a gift to Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam. But again, all of those riwayat are magdoob. They're all made up. They're all mawdu'. They're fabricated riwayat, even from within the Shia ulama. They refute them. Okay? When then you have, according to all of these ahadith, even the one from Zuhri mentioned that she came asking about what? Not about her gift from the Prophet ﷺ, but about her inheritance. So it was very clear it was inheritance. Now, I'm trying to really rush through this here. Okay, khair. All right. So now, one other thing to also keep in mind is that who was the one who, with regards to fulfilling the promise of the Prophet ﷺ, which was that any sadaqah that was left over, charity that was left over, and one of them is the land of Fadak, like we mentioned, that it was supposed to be meant for al-Bayt, for the family of the Prophet ﷺ, and the needy of the Muslims. Now, who was the one carrying out this promise? Meaning, who was the one who was taking the fruits and that which was coming from this land and distributing it to al-Bayt and the needy? It was Sidna Ali radiallahu anhu alayhi salam himself. In very sahih hadith, he himself, this one is in Abu Dawood and Al-Hakim and Al-Bazzar and Ahmad and etc. There's many. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ, even during his time, and Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam is saying during the time in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, I was the one who was giving out, the fruit from this land to al-Bayt, to the family of the Prophet ﷺ, and to the needy Muslims. And then he says, and I did it during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Who was managing it? Ali alayhi salam. And then Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam says, and I did it during the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu. Who was managing it? Again, Ali alayhi salam. So this whole picture that's painted, and unfortunately, it's painted from our books. From our books. And why are we talking about these things? Why is it important? Because we have this mentality that hadith is Quran. It is not Quran. Hadith is it's the work of human beings, okay? Transmitted by human beings. And for us to compare it to the Quran is an insult to the Quran. That is disrespectful to the Quran. Because it's extremely important that these things are clarified, because these things, whether it be Westerners, whether it be Muslims, will use these ahadith on one of both sides, one of either side, to pick a side. And don't ever think about picking a side. always take the side of loving both of them. And if you are not in a position to understand the details of what happened, then at the very least have that minimal respect for each party and don't take a side. Because by taking a side, we are hurting the Prophet ﷺ. If we side and we say with Sayyidina Fatimah alayhi salam, then we are hurting the Prophet ﷺ by having accused his best friend, his father-in-law, the father of his wife. We're having accused him of hurting and harming Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam. And vice versa. If we side with the side of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, then obviously we're accusing Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam of doing something which is unacceptable and not accepting that which was supposedly which was supposed to happen according to the hadith that Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was mentioned. So any side you pick, you're going to hurt the Prophet alayhi salatu salam. You're going to upset him. And there's no need to take a side. Because like we see, this whole drama never happened, as was shown in the hadith from Imam Zuhri, rahmatullah alayh. It didn't exist. And we proved it from our ahadith. We proved it from the ahadith of the Shia. So there's no need to take a side in the first place. But the point is, anytime if you hear something similar to this, be very careful to take a side. Because you taking a side, you're hurting the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. If it's in reference to those who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly was pleased with. I'm not talking about those who clearly went against the Sharia and went against al-Bayt clearly. We're not talking about those who murdered al-Bayt alayhim salam. We're not talking about those situations. We're talking about these situations where there's a difference of opinion and where we clearly see from these hadith that all that drama that was drawn up was completely needless. And all it did was cause a fire. And then that fire caused another fire. And then that fire caused another fire. So please keep in mind, anytime you come across a story or something like this, or somebody mentioning these things, don't let it slide. Don't let it slide. It is our responsibility to fix these things and to put out these fires between the Sunnah and the Shia and all Muslims and everybody. It is our responsibility. So next week, inshallah, or next dars, we'll see if it'll be next week or not, inshallah. We're going to actually go over some of the blatant lies. Okay, the blatant lies with regards to this story and with regards to Sayyidina Fatima alayhi salam. And as usual, we're going to be providing all the proof from the opinions of the scholars, the Sunni scholars, the Shia scholars, etc. So, inshallah, that's what we're going to be continuing in next dars. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. Jazakumullah khair, guys.